Yo, what's happening, everybody? This is your boy, First Mac, the Mad Scientist. This is Pro Wrestling Talk Live on this Tuesday evening. And if you are new to the channel, I will let you know that we will have live shows every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you like our content, do not forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button. And go ahead and comment and just give your thoughts and opinions about what we're going to talk about today. Because Tuesdays is really pro wrestling talk days, man. And there's been a lot of news that's been floating around. And just to give you a little bit of synopsis on what we got going on, Cody Rhodes finally says something that's worth some salt out here. The next one we're definitely going to be talking about is the frustration in the locker room because of The Rock's freedoms that he's been taking when it comes to promoting WrestleMania. And also some most recent news that came out on Undertaker's podcast that talks about him versus staying at WrestleMania and why it did not happen, because that was the talk, because everybody wanted to see that. And also we'll be talking about the prior bidding war for Mercedes Moné and what amount of money that totaled up to. Now, we don't have the exact amount, but we got the amount of figures that it totaled up to. And last but not least, definitely going to be talking about the WCW Mount Rushmore homegrown talent. I'm going to give you my personal Mount Rushmore of WCW talent. And I do want to hear about your Mount Rushmore of WCW homegrown talent as well by the end of the show. But just to let you guys know, this Cody Rhodes situation, I'm gonna give my thoughts and opinions on that. And he finally lets off, man. They finally let him talk his shit. They let him talk his talk out here. And honestly, over the past couple weeks, or past few weeks rather, Cody been looking real soft. I'm not even gonna hold you. And I don't think that's Cody's fault. The Rock has his own representative team. He is part of the board of directors on, for TKO, and he has certain freedoms that just comes with the territory. I mean, when you look at the hierarchy of the board of directors, he is above Triple H. He is above Nick Khan. Like, I think he's currently sitting in Vince McMahon's seat. Well, he's sitting in the Rock seat at this point, but he has certain liberties, and not many people got anything to say about that. So, if you really total up the time of promo that he's been cutting when it comes to Cody Rhodes and his fan base, it almost to 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, he cut promos on the internet. He cut promos. He did a whole concert for SmackDown, and it's been all Rock really, and less of Cody. And we need more of Cody. Like, we needed more vigor. And him crying on last week's show about how he want to win the title and stuff like that, it just didn't. It was ammunition for The Rock, and he actually mentions that. And what I mean by him having the handcuffs taken off of him, he was able to use profanity. I mean, he was using words like asshole. He called Rock Little Dick Syndrome and everything else in between. He called him a carny succubus, and like, you act like we needed you for WrestleMania, where we really didn't need you for WrestleMania. And people was, very vocal about that point. Like, you believed your own hype. Like, you really wasn't needed here. And really, Cody was speaking on behalf of the fan base, as we really didn't need him, at WrestleMania. And also, when we talk about the frustrations with the liberties that was taken with The Rock, and looking at this situation, some talent was frustrated with him because they weren't able to have those same freedoms. Why The Rock has these freedoms and we don't have these freedoms, and why he's able to say this and that and the third, but we can't have the handcuffs off of us because when we are in certain feuds or conflicts with the other character across from us, sometimes words are warranted, because if you use profanity consistently in your promos, then the use of profanity loses its luster, right? And to the point where, I've seen this before, you get tired of it, and this and that third in between. And to backtrack, what we know about The Rock, we grew up with The Rock in the Attitude Era. He's one of the best, if not the best, mic workers like in the history of pro wrestling. Now, if you put him into the PG era, that may shake a few trees here, because I mean, if you look in the PG era, it's not going to resonate the same way in the PG era like it does in the Attitude Era. Like, I mean, it's some things that he cut in his promo, it kind of went over my head. I was like, man, that's a little cringy. Like, this is not typical Rock material. Now, when he said Cody crybabies, I was like, nah, it's not hitting. I mean, it's not as bad as Diarrhea Dwayne. Like that, I don't know who wrote that, but they set Seth Rollins up for the okie doke for that one, because that sounds like something he would not say. And looking at the backstage news, is that there was a memo. Everyone got it, but they gave Cody. They knew that he had to come back against The Rock, but there was absolutely a memo. I got that from several different guys, and there's been other reporters who have too. So that's not for nothing, and no one else is allowed to do that. But Cody was given the opportunity to do it because basically they wanted him to stay babyface, essentially. And if he came off badly on this promo and Rock came off so great in Memphis, it's like that's not what they want. So it's almost like they was backed into a corner. And the source is Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer, because there was some frustrations in the locker room about those liberties, like I was saying earlier. And I understand why there were some frustrations in regards to Cody and everybody else that having these issues with what The Rock was saying. Not what he was saying, it's just the freedom where he was taking with it. And so Facebook user says, the now go home and smoke some more crack line from The Rock in Phoenix was gold. Now, hey, listen. Listen. Now that was hilarious. that was hilarious. I was like, okay. We got a little bit of the old school Rock there. Now, see, I said some lines was a little cringy, but there was others that were downright hilarious. Now, when it comes down to the frustration in the locker room, now Dave Meltzer also provided an update saying that it brought up how talent told to never use the word ass on Fox because the network doesn't want it. Yet Rock used the term several times on SmackDown. In regards to the PG guidelines memo that was reportedly sent to talent, some are said to believe that Rock should be following the rules to set an example, since he is on the TKO board of directors. Now, as one person noted, Rock does what he wants because he's on the board of directors. Nobody's going to say anything to him. He also has an entire team of representatives that he surrounds himself with. So any issues, they handle it, while he stays out of the mess with the people he directly deals with. But one person noted that there was a feeling that the era of Vince McMahon's double standards for his hand-picked stars and for everyone else was over under Paul Levesque, which is Triple H. Now, another reported issue with Rock's promos are that they have been running long, although Brian Gerwitz claimed that Rock's segment from SmackDown went 30 seconds under the allotted 20 minutes. Now, we're talking TV time here. Like, if it's TV time, like, Rock has been like on point with that as far as cutting his promo. Now, I mean, there was some rumors circling around that Trinity's match was cut short just a little bit because of how long Rock's promos was going. And to be honest with you, it's not really that much weight on the tag team match with Seth and Cody and Rock and Roman. It's really not. Like, it don't hold much weight there. I mean, there's a stipulation, of course, but it's not resonating well, because it's almost like, with Rock there is completely overshadowing, seems like, and I'm saying that's what it is. It seems like Roman and Cody is being overshadowed, whereas it got back on track when Paul Heyman came out last night and said, hey, Roman will be on SmackDown. You going to SmackDown. Y'all going to be face to face with each other. No bloodline, no Rock, nobody. It's just you and him. Y'all having this conversation with each other. You know, it's a deal. A deal is a deal when it comes to that. So now we're getting back on track with Cody and Roman and their build for WrestleMania, because honestly, WrestleMania is only a few weeks away. It's only a few weeks away. Like, you got to get this thing back on track. I know Rock has been completely overshadowing this situation, but this is temporary, people. This is temporary. And I don't understand, like, fans' frustration with this and how they view Rock right now and how he's overtaking and yada, yada, yada. But this is temporary stuff. Like, this is WrestleMania season. After WrestleMania season, Rock probably going back to Hollywood to do his own thing. Like, yes, he's on the board of directors and he's gonna get in where he fit in, but like, he's not gonna be there every single week after WrestleMania. You know, he's gonna be there for SummerSlam. He's gonna maybe Survivor Series and Royal Rumble, like the big four WWE events. And then of course with this deal with Netflix that WWE has, he's gonna be heavily involved with that too. Like, as far as him being in the ring and taking opportunities away from people, that right there is kind of like, it's not happening. It's not happening. So cool your jets, fan base. Cool your jets. Rock is only here for a short time, not a long time. He only here just to build numbers for it. Now, a lot of people don't realize, well, a lot of people do realize, but there's some people that don't realize that this wasn't the original story. And Rock interjected himself in this story because CM Punk was injured and Brock Lesnar is no longer part of WrestleMania and this whole situation with Vince McMahon. And so Rock like, listen, I got to save WrestleMania, so I'm going to do Rock and Roman at WrestleMania because everybody wants to see that. Sure, we all want to see that, but we don't want to see that at the expense of Cody, though. Like, we don't want to see that at the expense of a guy that won the Royal Rumble, that earned his chance, because this is a story that was 2 years plus in the making, and they have to finish that story. Now, is Cody going to win that match at WrestleMania? That remains to be seen, but he deserves the opportunity because he earned that opportunity. So the fans were very vocal on that. And if it was any other pay-per-view besides WrestleMania, it would have been Rock and Roman. But the fact that it is WrestleMania, they had to pivot. That was the word that everybody was using. They had to pivot back somehow, some way, back to Cody versus Roman, because if it would have went to what it was originally intended, WrestleMania probably wouldn't have been as good. Like, you don't want WrestleMania in a bad light. It's very hard to get WrestleMania in a bad light. And I mean, you have to try really hard to do that. And in this point, this was the direction it was leaning towards. It was leaning towards WrestleMania just being terrible. I wouldn't say terrible, but that main event wouldn't have been well received. Not how it was supposed to be received, because we want to see Rock and Roman. We want to see that happen, but not at the expense of someone else. And, you know, while we on WrestleMania, you know, a lot of people are, I know Sami Zayn tweeted, it was like, listen, I thought people was behind me. I thought people was cheering for me. And now it's weird because they don't want me to go after the IC title. With that, it's not the fact that it's Sami Zayn. We just know Sami Zayn is world heavyweight champion caliber type of guy. We figured he would be in it with Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre to some capacity because of the work he's been putting in and how he's been the main event guy. He's been part of the Bloodline storyline and with Jey Uso and everything else in between. It was just an odd pairing with Zayn and Gunther, where we know there's already a storyline built between Gable and Gunther. So that decision that was made, it was an odd decision to make. And it wasn't the fact it was Sami, because, you know, the fans not turning on Sami. They're turning on the fact that it was a decision to go with Sami, where we know Sami was supposed to be somewhere else. We feel like Sami deserves to be somewhere else. Gable deserves to finish his story with Gunther for the IC title, unless they're saying Gunther will not lose the IC title, and now that Sami Zayn is plugged in at WrestleMania to face Gunther for the IC title, I don't see him losing that title. Not to Sami Zayn. I don't think that's happening. And I think there's a feud being built up between Gable and Zayn because seeds was being planted last night with Gable saying, listen, you're not going to beat him. You can't beat him. Like, don't come out here with this underdog mentality because that's not happening. You know, don't depend on that because you will lose. And maybe, just maybe, Gable will be in this match as a triple threat. And even still, don't know. Gunther may come out now that Sami Zayn is in it and Chad Gable's in it in the triple threat. That makes things a little murky. That muddy up the waters a little bit. Also, the thing I'm questioning is the tag team turmoil match at WrestleMania for the tag team championships. Why are you putting all these tag teams together? Where we know the story is R-Truth, Miz versus the Judgment Day. That was the whole entire story. Like, Truth trying to be part of Judgment Day. They constantly turn on this man and beat this man ass, and Miz is standing up for R-Truth, and now their tag teams. Like, that's easy work. That's easy stuff. And I understand the notion on including everyone they possibly can into WrestleMania because they want to have that WrestleMania moment, because that's really the selling point when you try to bring in talent, is like you will be in WrestleMania to some capacity. I get all that. But it's another one of those situations where you're doing it at the expense of someone else. Like, R-Truth been with the company for forever and a day. And everything you gave this man, he turned into gold. Everybody loves R-Truth. That's just what it is. So I think he deserves that moment. Like, him and Miz deserve that moment of being tag team champions. And please give us new tag team championships, because I'm not a fan of those tag team championships. But other than that, though, I will say this about WrestleMania. This might be the most pro wrestling heavy WrestleMania we've seen in a very long time. Like, WrestleMania is always about spectacle and sports entertainment, but I would definitely say this is the most pro wrestling heavy. And I think that we will see some core pro wrestling matches, like some Wrestle Kingdom type stuff. Like, I know it's 2 nights. It's night 1 and night 2. So just be mentally prepared for that. And it might bring some people to pro wrestling. Who knows? Now, the next thing we're definitely going to talk about is Sting versus Undertaker get nixed by Vince McMahon. So that was the most recent news that came out. Now we know the truth now. We know the truth. What happened with The Undertaker? What happened with Sting? Because everybody wanted Sting versus Undertaker at Mania. Now that you had Sting at WWE for however long, whether it was a short period of time, whatever, that was your golden opportunity to put Undertaker and Sting together in the ring. At this point, I don't care who wins, man. Just make everybody look good across from each other. And I mean, Undertaker was still wrestling matches. And according to Undertaker, because he stated this in his podcast of 6 Feet Under, he said it just didn't work out. He had a short run in WWE and Vince didn't want it. For whatever reason, I don't know what it was. He didn't feel it. Everybody else was clamoring for this match for quite a few years. A year or two into that character change, I mean, people were already sending me artwork with the billboard or the poster. It just never worked out. The match would have been good, but I don't think it would have lived up to the expectations that people have for it. People always think about things in a certain sense. I think they thought in their mind, Undertaker 2007 or 08 versus Sting, it was later on than that. I can say I was way on the backside of what I was going to do when he got there. You know, Undertaker got a valid point. He has a valid point. But as a fan base, we didn't care. We just wanted Sting and Undertaker. Listen, if Rock and Hogan was able, they stared at each other for like, what, 5 minutes? And the crowd wouldn't shut up. Like, they was just on their feet for Rock and Hogan. They didn't have to do a whole lot. So this was going to be in the same vein as Rock and Hogan. You was going to have Sting and Undertaker, and you know, Undertaker being the flagship bearer of WWE and Sting being the flagship bearer of WCW. Like, that was so easy to do. I mean, you could protect both of the talents. You could protect Sting. You could protect Undertaker. They would have protected each other. And Sting been vocal about, hey, yeah, I would love to face the Undertaker at WrestleMania. I mean, who wouldn't, man? The golden opportunity was the WrestleMania from a few years ago where he wrestled Triple H. And I'm still salty about that. But I'm not as salty about that now because of how his retirement match went. Because he retired undefeated in AEW. So that really negate anything that WWE ever did with him. But I understood why Triple H took the dub, because they were, you know, preparing for Triple H versus Rock the following year, and they needed Triple H to be strong out of WrestleMania. And of course, you know, Sting understood the assignment when that came down to what it was. But Sting versus Undertaker, man, it's like one of those dream matches that never was. And there was a point in time that they were in the same company together. It wasn't one of those times where these guys never crossed paths. These guys never were in the same company together. They were in the same company together. Undertaker was still doing matches. He was still doing WrestleMania. Granted, he was doing that once a year thing. You know, once he finished with that match at WrestleMania, you know, you got to go see the documentary on Undertaker, and what he put his body through after the fact, and to prepare himself for the following year of WrestleMania. Easily could have been done. Easily could have been done, but I'm still a little salty about that we never got that, but that's neither here or there. So now we know who's the culprit on denying us Sting versus Undertaker, and it's that dirtbag Vince McMahon. It is what it is. So next up, we got Mercedes Moné, now formerly known as Sasha Banks. Now, Mercedes Moné made her debut with AEW last week, and I'm gonna tell you right now, man, it was definitely one for the ages, and she sold out the place. She sold out TD Garden, and she's going to be on AEW tomorrow night on Dynamite, which will premiere TBS 8 p.m. So if you missed that Mercedes Moné debut last week, hey, it's your opportunity. So if you're not a fan of AEW, it comes on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. on TBS, and Collision comes on at 8 p.m. on TNT. Now, this Wednesday, it will be a 3-hour show because Rampage is temporarily moving to Wednesday because of the NCAA tournament that's supposed to take place right now, actually. And so to alleviate that, they're having 2 shows for 3 hours. So you got Dynamite from 8 to 10, and you got Rampage from 10 to 11. So you got yourself a whole pro wrestling block. And if you missed the Attitude Era, if you missed that edginess of what it used to be, then AEW is for you. AEW is definitely for you. Now, as far as Mercedes Moné is concerned, it was noted that discussions between Mercedes Moné and AEW were said to have taken place for about 18 months before she officially signed with the company. It is believed that while talks with WWE happened later, executives were absolutely wanting her back in the family. Now, it was noted that the final decision had to do with where Mercedes would have the strongest potential, not only for herself, but for the future of women's wrestling. Johnson wrote that, quote, "We are told by sources that a major part of the decision to go with AEW was that Moné believed that while going back to WWE could have been beneficial, it would have been a return to where she had already been." Now, it was added that AEW will give Mercedes more freedom and time to work on projects outside of wrestling, such as acting and mental health awareness. Now, both WWE and AEW were reportedly willing to commit to contracts that amounted to 8 figures total between WWE and AEW. The belief is that Mercedes is now the highest paid female performer in wrestling history with her AEW contract. Listen, this is one of them scenarios where you know your worth. Like if you are a fan of Sasha Banks or Mercedes Moné, if you are a true fan of hers, you follow her anywhere she goes. Like if you salty that she left one company to go branch out and do Stardom and do the Mandalorian, and she's still in the Star Wars lore, and she was in the contract talks with WWE and just didn't go the way she wanted to go, and then AEW said, hey, we're gonna offer you this plus this and this. It's about knowing your worth. Like, don't get salty with her, because there's some people on the internet be like, well, she wasn't talented like that anyway. Nah, you just salty that she didn't go to the company that you wanted her to go to. So that means you weren't really truly a fan of hers in the first place. You was a bottom feeder. That's what you were. You was a bottom feeder. So if you're a true fan of Mercedes Moné, go follow her in AEW. See what she does in AEW. And I'm always an advocate for knowing your worth. Even if WWE offered her more money and she went back to WWE, know your worth, because you feel like that's what you're worth and that's what it is. I mean, she left a company that, you know, she was frustrated, but she always spoke good things about WWE, and it's all about not burning your bridges. And I get that. And she had frustrations along with Trinity, or Naomi as we know her, and then Naomi went off to TNA and Mercedes went off to Stardom, and they constantly support each other. And so when she made her debut at TD Garden, Bayley, Trinity, Tamina, they all were there at AEW, but you didn't see them, obviously, because of legal reasons, obviously. But, you know, they was up in the high rise, like just, you know, in the balcony, just sitting there chilling and watching it with mask on, of course. But still, they was there to support her, none the same. So, yeah, if you are a fan of Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks, just follow her and see what she does in AEW. Like, she's going to be there on Wednesday, and I believe her first match official will be AEW Dynasty, which is the next pay-per-view, which is next month. If they pull the trigger and have her in a match before then, that is by her own design. That's something that she wants to do. And the impact that Mercedes has on that AEW women's locker room, before Mercedes showed up, the women's locker room was getting consistently better. They have longer matches, and the matches a little bit more physical. It wasn't like it was before. And Mercedes is just that cherry on top. And now that she bring her 2+ million follower base to AEW, and she spoke with ESPN about this situation, and, you know, her choice to go to AEW. So with her as a woman, she could bring more eyes to the product. Like, she can add to selling out arenas. Like, man, honestly and truly, she's a bigger star than CM Punk was. Like, yes, you lost CM Punk, but you got someone bigger in Mercedes. Not only you signed Mercedes, you signed Will Ospreay, you signed Kazuchika Okada, you signed 3 of the biggest signings in pro wrestling in 2023, 2024. 3 people that WWE were pining for. And AEW got all 3. And they're looking not to slow down. And they got executives in the back. And Mercedes, obviously, she got some creative freedoms from what I'm understanding. And she could take time off whenever she wants. And I think she's just making that women's locker room better. She's making it better. I think she's going to have a lengthy run as champion whenever she becomes champion. But just her being there, her presence alone is bringing new eyes to the product. And I think she can really move the needle when it comes down to AEW. But only time will tell. But I have a strong feeling that she will be magical in AEW. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is WCW Mount Rushmore homegrown talent. Now, those of us that grown up in the South, of course we know about WWE, but most of the stuff that we used to see on TV was NWA and WCW. And WCW, before AEW, WCW was the direct competition for WWE. And at one point in time, WWE was this close on going out of business because of what Monday Nitro was doing. I mean, they was beating Monday Night Raw for 83 weeks straight. And You had people like Sting and Hogan and Hall and Nash and the NWO and everything else in between, you know, Booker T, you know, Scott Steiner. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. So to say at one point, you know, WCW was like a fledgling company, like despite the successes that we saw on TV and how glamorous things looked on TV, behind the scenes, money was getting hemorrhaged. But up until Eric Bischoff and Monday Nitro, and then they went from the red to being in the green, and they're making these big signings and everything else. Then ultimately getting bought out by WWE in 2001. If you don't believe me about some of the greatness that WCW was putting out there, you definitely need to go to Peacock and check out WCW section, the Monday Nitros, the Saturday nights, and Clash of Champions, all the WCW pay-per-views that they had. You know, I wouldn't say the 2001s was all that great, but anything like prior to that, it's there. So it was asked on Twitter, what is your WCW Mount Rushmore? So I'm gonna give you my Mount Rushmore, and feel free in the comments if you want to give your Mount Rushmore. Now this is homegrown talent, all right? These are not acquisitions. So Hall and Nash and Hogan is automatically out, because they came from WWE and changed the game. So my Mount Rushmore, Sting is on my Mount Rushmore for obvious reasons. Sting is my all-time favorite wrestler of all time. But not only that, like, take my fandom out of that. Like, if you don't have Sting on your Mount Rushmore for WCW, I don't know, you smoking crack. This is what it is. It is what it is. Like, Sting is the flagship bearer for WCW. Like, this man literally was the last man standing in WCW. From Surfer Sting to the Crow Sting, like, he was one of the two reasons why Nitro was leading the charts for 83 weeks straight. Because everybody was tuned in, waiting on Sting to show up. By the end of the show, you watched that whole show waiting on Sting, but during the whole show, you was getting everything and more. But Sting is that guy. He is the legend. He is the icon. He belongs on the WCW Mount Rushmore. And also, this goes to the second person that actually made him, and that is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. That's also, like, these two names for sure should be on your Mount Rushmore for WCW. Straight up. Like, Ric Flair and Sting and their rivalry and the epic feuds that they had, wrestling to a draw at Clash of Champions and finally going over on Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight Championship. Ric Flair was so high on Sting that he refused to drop the title to anybody else until Sting got better. After an injury, he's like, I'm gonna drop it to him. I'm not gonna drop it to anybody else. I'm gonna hold on to this title until he's fully healed, and then I'm gonna drop it to him. Hey, listen, that says a lot about that man. So Ric Flair, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, should be on your Mount Rushmore for WCW. Now my third, the People's Champion, DDP. You thought I was about to say The Rock, but not. He was called the People's Champion in WCW, and DDP was definitely a flagship bearer for WCW, man. His feuds with Macho Man Randy Savage and his Diamond Cutter to Scott Hall, like, out of nowhere, Diamond Cutter, man. The cutter, like, he originated that cutter. Like, I know Randy Orton got the RKO, the jumping cutter, but something about DDP, man. DDP was definitely another flagship bearer for WCW. I have his DVD set, like some of his best matches, and one of his best matches was against Sting. Some of his best matches was against Macho Man, and honestly and truly, he gave Goldberg's best match in his entire career is against DDP at Halloween Havoc. Straight out the gate. Like, there's no better match Goldberg had except for DDP. DDP was the person that made the best out of Goldberg. For sure. DDP. So, now, for the fourth one, I had to wrestle with this. I really had to wrestle with this because there's some notable mentions out there. There's Ron Simmons, right? Ron Simmons, as you know, you can see right here, you know, he's the first African-American world champion. That was like in 92, if I'm not mistaken. He beat Vader. And speaking of Vader, Vader is another one. One of the most acrobatic big men I've ever seen. Like, when you see like a 400 plus pound man do a moonsault freely, a moonsault, no struggles, jumping like a cruiserweight, that is the most athletic dude I have ever seen. That is over 400 pounds. That's crazy. That's crazy. And he was a bruiser too, man. Like, if you in the ring with Vader, you gonna get your ass beat. That's just what it is. You better come in there on your P's and Q's. So Vader is definitely a notable mention. Booker T is a notable mention as well. With Harlem Heat, him and Stevie Ray. Now, before there was Cole and Kane, but they changed their name in Harlem Heat, where Sensational Sherry as their manager, multi-time WCW Tag Team Champions, but this ain't tag teams. This ain't tag teams for WCW. Maybe the next show we do WCW Tag Teams, the Mount Rushmore of WCW Tag Teams. Man, I had to think about that. I really had to think about that. And my pick for the fourth person in the Mount Rushmore, it's gonna shock you, is Dean Malenko, the man of 1,000 holds. Anybody that's anybody will say the glue that put Nitro together is that cruiserweight division. That cruiserweight division is the best cruiserweight division out of any wrestling show or wrestling promotion I have ever seen. That division was crazy. And I feel like that division deserves flowers every single day. You, besides Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio Jr., Psychosis, Lil Parker, El Dandy, Ultimo Dragon, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Billy Kidman, and listen, I'm Juventud Guerrero. Listen, like the luchadors for the cruiserweights, man, and with the American wrestlers as well. Like, those are some of the best matches, man. Man. I mean, there's a YouTube video out there that shows WCW cruiserweight matches. Like all you gotta do is WCW cruiserweight matches. There's like a whole list of cruiserweight matches you can watch and see. And honestly, one of my favorite wrestlers out there was Psychosis. Psychosis' finisher was like a jumping leg drop. Like, he jumped off the top rope and leg drop you. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. And it don't seem like a whole lot, but I really appreciate that. But Dean Malenko had some epic feuds, man. Like, this man was all business. He wasn't the luchador type, but he was a cruiserweight. And you can jump around, flip around, and do all things you want to do. But if he catch you in a hole, that's it for you. The Texas Cloverleaf is what you got you in. That was his finisher. But he had you in all other moves. The shoulder breaker, spine buster, like neck holds, wrist holds, like drop toe holds. Like, man, this dude was a technical savant in the ring. Like, it didn't matter what wrestling style you was at. Dean Malenko will ground you easily. Don't let him get his hands on you. Dean Malenko, like, to me, headlined the cruiserweight division. I know people talk about Rey Mysterio because, you know, the flashiness and the jumping around and stuff, but Dean Malenko was just a different cat. Like, he was a cruiserweight, but he was different. And if you in the ring with this man, you better be on your P's and Q's, because he got you. He's got you. And the way his technical genius was, it was like Kurt Angle-esque, Bret the Hitman Hart-esque. Now, I mean, he even went up higher into the division because he was part of the Four Horsemen, you know, even though it was like short-lived. But some of his best work, though, honestly and truly, was in that cruiserweight division. And he deserves to be in that Mount Rushmore. Like, if you don't have a cruiserweight in your Mount Rushmore, what are you doing? What are you doing? You got, because I do understand, like, with Booker T became world champion, you know, by proxy, because, you know, some other behind the scenes stuff that was going on. And I think Booker T really, truly got his single shine, like when he was in WWE, when he was King Booker. But some of his best work, though, was when he was TV champion. and having the best of 7 series. I think it was him and Chris Benoit, the best of 7 series for the TV championship. And he was doing his thing. He grew out on his own. And that's why people start to realize like Booker T is a singles guy, and we could really do something with Booker T as a singles guy. But with Dean Malenko though, man, you got to have Dean Malenko. And people didn't even thought about it. I know I blew some people's minds when I say Dean Malenko. Like, you got to go back and watch some of Dean Malenko's matches. Like, he wrestled with some angst. He wrestled with some vigor. That's what he wrestled with, man. So, but check it. This is our show for today. Now, Thursday, again, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Myself and Boogie Blends will be talking all things of geek culture, man. All things of blurred culture, nerd culture. Tomorrow, it's the premiere of X-Men 97, the animated series. For the Marvel fans that's in here. Because I've been rewatching the X-Men animated series, and I've been reading some comics, and I know I mentioned Cyclops to my co-host Vivo off air, and I told her, I'm like, listen, Cyclops was getting a bad rap on X-Men the animated series. I'm just telling you, but Cyclops in the comics is a whole different cat. A whole different cat. And it seems like with the trailer that dropped recently, like with Marvel, it might showcase a little bit of Cyclops in his edginess. And that's what I want to see, man. I want to see that. I want to see Psylocke. I want to see Archangel. I know we got Bishop. My boy Bishop is in the mix. And I'm happy to see that. But tomorrow's the premiere of X-Men 97, at least the first episode. And I think it's going to be 12 episodes. I think it's going to be 12 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. But we're definitely going to be talking about that on Thursday. We're definitely going to be talking about some other news that I'm not going to reveal yet. We're talking about some other news that's going on around the geekdom, nerd culture, and including gaming as well. So, you guys have a blessed night. So, until next time, peace.